covering the stories that impact your life, your town, your state, and your future. This is the Means Report with your host, Brad Means.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Means Report. We certainly appreciate you spending part of your time with us, where today we are staying focused on the political scene. We've been trying to get as many candidates onto the Means Report as we can in recent weeks so that you can meet them, so that you can make an informed decision at the polls, and today is certainly no different. You know, we have a runoff in the central Savannah River area coming up in just a few short days, and we are here to talk to the candidates for Superior Court Judge to get their goals for the court system. Should they be elected, what kind of judges would they be? We'll find out, and we'll also let you know how to stay in touch with us. That's going to be at the end of this broadcast so that you can help us get more great guests like my two guests today, Matson and Charles Lyons III. Mr. Matson and Mr. Lyons are running for Superior Court Judge in the Augusta Circuit. Thank you all for taking the time and really for rearranging your schedules to be here today. I appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
My questions are just basic today for both of y'all, so hopefully, as I mentioned, the viewers can get a chance to know you, know where you stand on some issues. And my first one is just to ask, as attorneys, is it one's goal when you're in law school, maybe even before that, to be a judge? To young lawyers, Matt, we'll start with you and then we'll go to you, Charles, dream of one day being on the bench?
I would say that could be a goal for a lot of people. When I was in law school, it really wasn't on my horizon. I was just trying to get through law school and figuring out what I was going to do with my career. But I clerked for Judge Everstreet and Judge Brown for 2 years straight out of Mercer Law School, and I got to sit with them and talk with them and see what they did every day. And I was really inspired by them and also the other judges in our circuit. And I think that's kind of what planted the seed for me. It wasn't something going back further than that, but seeing how they impacted the community and how they acted with respect and professionalism really inspired me.
How about you, Charles? A lifelong goal or dream of yours to be a judge?
No, it wasn't. And in law school, you have very few people aspire to be a judge. If there are more, they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
There's a saying, at least there was a saying when I was in law school, which was forever ago. A students became law professors, B students became judges, C students made all the money. So that I don't know if that's still around or not, but and that C part is not totally correct either. But no, I did not aspire to be a judge. I enjoyed practicing law. I've been doing it a long time. It's just over the years, just with practicing, experiences, meeting people asking me about, I think you'll be a pretty good judge. Have you ever thought about being a judge? And for years I said no. And just one morning I kind of woke up and said, I think I might be okay with being a judge. I think I might be able to do a good job, and let's see.
Why is that, do you think? Is it a personality that you have the personality to interact with your colleagues, defendants, and others, plaintiffs, or that you have just such a great knowledge of the law, or is it all of the above?
I think if I say all of the above, I'll be being a little too more than modest. But
Sure.
But I think the relationships that I have been able to establish over the last almost 40 years as an attorney, being able to communicate with people, being able to get along with people, being able to relate to clients, in particular clients with criminal cases, those can be some difficult clients to deal with. And also, I guess also because I've been doing it so long, I have developed what I think is a great amount of legal knowledge that I think would be very helpful to take to the bench.
Same question for you, Matt. What skills do you possess that would make you good at this job?
Yeah, so I've got a variety of experience. I was a prosecutor, I was a law clerk, I've done prosecution and defense, I've done plaintiff's work and defense work. And I think just that breadth of experience, seeing it from so many different sides, and being able to be fair and humble, realizing that when you're in that courtroom, the people who are there don't want to be there. Something bad has happened,
Yeah.
and just to be able to take each case and be respectful to everyone and listen to them, I think I've got that, and I think I've got the right demeanor to make those difficult decisions.
Let me ask y'all each what kind of judge you would be. Matt, we'll stick with you to start. You think you'd be the kind of judge where people would be relieved when they find out that you have their case, or fearful maybe if they find out that Judge Matson's on the job?
I'm not sure that anybody would be fearful or relieved. I think maybe the relief in that, knowing just what I said, that I'll treat everyone with respect and fairness and be humble in making those decisions. I think a lot of people are afraid when they go in the courtroom, whether it's their first time or whether they've been there many times. It's not a place that people want to be, but I can tell you that I've had a lot of clients on all different sides of cases, and that I've treated each one of them with respect and with the dignity they deserve. And I'll continue to do that on the bench.
You think people would feel the same way? Just, okay, this guy's going to give me a fair shake, Charles?
I think what people would think about me is that I'm consistent, because the community, people who end up before judges, they're the ones to establish that type of reputation for you. Not so much as for yourself. You could be the toughest judge in town, and you may have a reputation that's been developed that you're not, and vice versa. So I think consistency would be the thing that people would think more about me, that, hey, he's pretty consistent in what he does, which I think equates to fairness, that if you are consistent, more likely you're being fair.
Can a judge, Charles, fight crime, or are y'all just the punishment part of the legal system?
Well, I've always said that a judge has a role in the community, and that is a role to do what he or she can within the context of what judges are restricted from doing.
Right.
And so I think it's important that judges have their hands in activities that helps young people in particular avoid situations which may put them before a judge with a criminal case. Of course, there is the philosophy that if you met out tough sentences, that has a deterrence effect. And that may or may not be so. My experience has been that people who are involved in criminal activity, they don't think about what's going to be the consequences. They take the act first, and then they think about the consequences later. So I always think you got to be proactive on the end of deterrence. Yeah. And that is, when I say deterrence, I mean having a role to play into helping steer people away from criminal activity.
What's that role look like for you, Matt? Have you had time to think about that, like outside of the courtroom, how you might influence and improve our community?
Absolutely. I've been involved in a lot of nonprofits, and I think a lot of it goes to catching people when they're young, letting them know that there are other options. I think youth sports is a big part, where you get folks together working towards common goals. And I think that another thing is just education. I've worked with United Way and Community Foundation, other nonprofits that help support reading. That's one of the number one indicators of whether or not somebody's going to be imprisoned, is whether they can read by third grade. And that's something that's really important, is catching people young, educating them, getting them involved in something, because judges aren't crime fighters in the way that you put it.
Right.
Because at that point, you've only got so many tools, right? If someone's committed a violent felony, then incarceration is probably the only tool you've really got. Now, there are other tools if you're talking about mental health issues or substance abuse issues. That's something that Superior Court has to try to address those issues that may be leading to crimes, rather than just the punishment aspect. And I think that's something that I would like to be involved in, the drug court and the mental health court.
I'll ask you one more question before we take our first break, and it has to do with those tools that you mentioned, and whether there are any limitations when it comes to the leeway you all would have as a judge when it comes to sentencing. Do you go back to your computer at your desk and search the sentencing guidelines, and you must be married to those? Or can you, in a case-by-case basis, administer your rulings based on what your heart tells you, maybe, or something outside of those black and white sentencing guidelines?
Well, I think you've got to be consistent. You've got to treat people fairly and equally, everybody who comes across. So there has to be some consistency within what have you done on other cases, right? But you also have to look at each case individually listen to what happened in that case, listen to the witnesses, listen to the families, listen to the victims' families, and make the decision that makes sense for that case and for the community. But you got to be consistent across no matter who it is that's coming to your courtroom, but you've got to listen to each case to be fair.
Do you agree with that, Charles? What are your thoughts on case-by-case sentencing versus just doing whatever the Westlaw or precedent tells you to do?
Well, I know you mentioned sentencing guidelines. We are running for Superior Court judge here at the Augusta Judicial Circuit. We don't have sentencing guidelines for judges. On the federal side, you do.
Okay.
On the state side, you don't.
They're just not there. I didn't know that. All right.
No, they're not. And so a Superior Court judge has a lot of discretion as far as sentencing goes if you're not talking about the type of offenses that require mandatory sentences. So if there are certain crimes that have mandatory sentences, in armed robbery, for example, the minimum sentence on an armed robbery is 10 years. So a judge can't sentence a person to less than 10 years. But outside of those mandatory sentences for certain offenses, a judge has that discretion to listen to what's being presented. And that's why I think it's so important to have a relationship with lawyers, that a judge understands lawyers and know what lawyers they can trust. Because as I've said before, other audiences, the judge really doesn't know anything about the case in front of them as far as sentencing and that type of thing.
It's up to the lawyer.
Unless they tried the case, as a jury trial. If it's just someone's being sentenced, pleading guilty, then you don't know that person's getting sentenced. You then have to depend on what these lawyers are telling you. The district attorney's office, those attorneys, and the defense attorney. Yeah. And reputations matter with attorneys, that the judge is listening, and whether or not this is a person that you can put any faith into what they're saying to you. Because it boils down to pretty much that. Of course, you're going to have maybe some witnesses that may testify.
No, gotcha.
But you got to depend a lot on what these lawyers say. You have no much of an option.
A lot to learn about the legal system from these two gentlemen who are running for a seat on the Augusta Judicial Circuit bench. Matson and Charles Lyons III, our special guests on the Means Report. Welcome back to the Means Report. We appreciate you staying with us as we meet the candidates for the Augusta Superior Court seat that is open thanks to the retirement of longtime Judge Danny Craig. Also, this Augusta Judicial Circuit, so you know, covers Richmond and Burke counties. Matson and Charles Lyons III, my special guests today. Matt, let's start with you this segment and ask you if you think we have a fair court system or if there are things you'd like to tweak or change about it.
Well, I think having a fair court system depends on having fair judges. I think we have some really good, hardworking judges. As you just mentioned, Danny Craig, we're losing a long-time attorney, prosecutor, and judge in Danny Craig. And I think it's really important who we have on the bench, someone who's going to be fair and listen to everyone and to be humble and realizing what's going on in that courtroom. And so I think we do have a fair court system, but it's dependent on the people who are there and they're doing the work.
How about you, Charles? Any tweaks, changes?
Once again, I think we have a fair court system. Changes, in my mind, would more so affect the lawyers. As far as how much time we require lawyers to appear in courtrooms. Because having done this for almost 40 years, and I feel like I could do it 40 more years if I had to, but there is a point where lawyers get worn out.
Yeah.
And when lawyers get worn out, you're just not getting much done. And if you're getting anything done, it's not effective. So I think listening to what the lawyers think helps them help the court, because lawyers can shut it down and they can also help speed it up. So if I tweak anything, is trying to communicate with the lawyers to find out, well, listen, what can we all do together to make this system work better?
Let's look at that judge-attorney relationship and the conversations that might be had. And my question is this: how do you keep it, for lack of a better word, professional versus, because y'all have both been around long enough to have relationships outside of the courtroom with these attorneys, social relationships. How do you separate that from the doing your job part of being a judge? And Matt, we can start with you and go to Charles next.
Sure. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of lawyers throughout this campaign and a lot of judges because I want to know what is it that's important to them and a judge. And you've got to be held accountable by the voters and by lawyers and everybody else if you're going to be serving the community. And one of the things that I've heard lawyers say is, they want access to court. They want to have courtroom space. They want to be able to have trials. And hearing that kind of feedback is important. And you've got to remember that even though when you're in the courtroom, the judge sits up on the bench, but you're still a lawyer. And you've got to be held accountable, and you've got to be willing to listen to positive feedback and criticism about not necessarily how you ruled in a case, but whether it be we need to be able to get more jury trials or whatever it is. And of course, I would remain a lawyer's lawyer who'd talk to people and be willing to take on that feedback and not be the person who's just sitting up high in the courtroom.
Are you comfortable with that, Charles, looking down from the bench and seeing your friends practicing in front of you?
Oh yes, because I think I have the respect of the bar. And you don't get the respect of the bar just because they give it to you. You get the respect of the bar because you earn it. And so that wouldn't be a problem. But having done this for so long, I understand that lawyers have to be treated with respect and dignity. I understand that people who appear before you, for whatever reason, that they're entitled to be treated with respect and dignity. And I also understand that old saying that my mother told me, that you can attract bees with honey and not with something else. So being nice to people helps a lot. And what a lot of people don't understand is lawyers, we get along with the judges.
Yeah.
It's not adversarial between the lawyers and the judges. The judges are our friends, and even though we have different roles when we're in court and that type of thing, we don't hate the judges. Sometimes we don't like their decisions, but we don't take that personal. We understand that's professional.
Would y'all say, and this doesn't have to be a deep answer, just kind of a yes or no maybe, would y'all say the judges prefer to have cases settled before they go to trial, or do most judges want to see the trial? Like just the legal system in general, is it better to settle or not? Or easier or lighter on the load of the legal system to settle or not, Matt?
Well, definitely lighter on the legal system
Yeah.
to settle because there are so many cases out there. And what we know as lawyers is cases tend to settle once there's a trial date, right? Because every lawyer's busy, whether you're a prosecutor, defense attorney, or in private practice, whatever you're doing, you've got more than one case, and a trial date gets everybody focused on it, whether it be your client, the other client, an insurance adjuster, everybody. So it's one of those things where you don't know if a case is going to settle until you've got, in many cases, until there's a trial date. Now, I think, judges want cases tried that need to be tried.
Right.
And that's their job, and that's the lawyer's job too. But there are a lot of cases that could be settled early on, and we have mandated mediation that helps people work through those issues on the civil side of things. So yes, it does help lighten the load, but you got to stand ready to have trials or that work doesn't get done. Those cases don't get settled until there is a possibility of a trial, and then if it doesn't get settled, you got to be ready to let the people decide what's going to happen.
Charles, is there a favorite type of case that you like? One that where you feel like you as a judge can make a real difference, and conversely, are there cases that trouble you that you don't like? And again, our time is short, but just kind of good cases for you, bad cases for you.
Well, most of what I've done throughout my career have been criminal defense cases. Yeah. And so I enjoy trying those kind of cases. Now, there are some type of criminal cases that no one enjoys. Mm-hmm. The child molestation cases, those type of cases. but you still have to deal with those. There's a side that most people don't talk about, especially during these type of campaigns, and that's the domestic relations side of being a judge. And the good things you like to see. I don't do as many as I used to, but I used to do a lot of adoptions. That was always the happy side of the law practice, the happy side, I'm sure, of being a judge, because you're uniting a family, you're bringing in someone and making that person an official part of a family, and that was always a good thing. And I just want to add this, is not the question you just asked, but money, we can always must remember that money is always important in the criminal justice, in the legal aspect of law, being a judge, and that is we have limited resources. So judges are operating with limited resources as what they can do.
You're talking about more funding for the legal system.
More funding, because when you're talking about resolving cases.
Yeah, real quick.
You're always in a better position to resolve it because it costs more money when they drag out.
I appreciate the perspective that each one of y'all brings. You mentioned that you were a criminal defense attorney. You, with the solicitor's office, were on the other side. Did cases, are there cases that you prefer and cases that you don't? And then to follow up with that, really, it's our last answer. How do you leave those emotions and those feelings that no doubt hit your heart, leave them in the courtroom so that you can go home and be a normal dad and husband and person?
Absolutely. So I've done a lot of different types of work. I've been a prosecutor. I was in private practice, and I've been in the private sector working for different companies. So I've been involved in class actions and multi-million-dollar litigation. So really, I wouldn't say that I have a favorite. What I like to do is when I have a client come in, if it's something that I can help them with and they know that I care, then I'm willing to take on any kind of case where I can help. As far as leaving the emotions behind, that is a difficult thing because you care when you're involved in a case. You can't just turn off your brain when you leave the office, but when you get home and you've got your family there, you have to be able to separate that in your mind because they need you to be present, and I'm fully present with my family and my community. So
it's tough sometimes, y'all, and especially being in this business, we read horrible stories at night, and you do have to sort of compartmentalize and move on. One of these gentlemen is going to be a judge in the Augusta Judicial Circuit in a very short time. Charles Lyons III, Matson, thank you all for taking the time, and all the best with both of your campaigns.
Thank you, Brad.
Absolutely, we appreciate it. We will cover y'all come June 18th. Keep it here on News Channel 6 for that. And keep it here to find out how you can stay in touch with the Means Report in a moment.